I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grant, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism. But the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
Bernie Sanders has shifted from criticizing the oligarchy to openly advocating socialism, and Bill Maher isn't holding back. The sharp-tongued comedian ripped into Sanders for the double standard, highlighting that he thrived because of the very capitalist system he now attacks. Maher's takedown was fiery, relentless, and a total dismantling of Sanders' socialist pitch. Let's jump straight into the moment.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Maher delivers a reality check that too many people seem to overlook. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zohran Mamani like to portray themselves as harmless social democrats, but their agendas lean far closer to outright socialism. For those unclear on the difference, here's the quick breakdown. Social democrats operate within a capitalist framework, keeping markets central while the state provides strong safety nets to promote fairness and protect the vulnerable. Socialists, by contrast, push much further, advocating for major industries to be publicly owned or tightly controlled by the state, removing authority from private business entirely. That ideological divide is real, and Maher isn't willing to gloss over it.
Again, this is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are very likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money. Oh, I guess I just did.
That right there captures the true American pulse. Most Americans firmly reject any push toward a heavily regulated socialist system where the government dictates essentials like food or basic needs. People here value choice, freedom, and the ability to build something with their own hands, even with its flaws. And the polls Maher highlighted make that clear. The public still favors capitalism over a heavy-handed government alternative. They want reform, not domination, upgrades, not complete overhauls. That's exactly why Sanders and his allies struggle to gain traction. Their vision may sound inspiring on a stage, but everyday Americans instinctively resist the outcome it leads to. People understand what happens when governments try to control everything, and they aren't willing to trade personal freedom for rigid ideological experiments.
We just increased military spending with very little discussion, I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military-industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too?
Yes, absolutely correct. Absolutely right.
But that's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's
right?
Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism, that's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military-industrial complexes. All right, but anyhow,
right.
So when you talk about giveaways, you have major corporations in this country that make billions in profit, don't pay a nickel in taxes. You have a generation, you talk about this younger generation right now. I got around the country and I talk to a lot of people. You know, I don't know anything about that poll, but I tell you, I've talked to nurses who are working their ass off, doing the right thing. They leave school $70,000 and that they can't afford now to get married and have children.
Sure, but charging headfirst into full-blown socialism isn't the solution. And Maher makes that clear. The problems Bernie Sanders highlights are real. They're the extreme edges of capitalism, but addressing them doesn't require tearing the entire system down. Soaring costs, corporate greed, and the financial squeeze on young people demand practical solutions, not sweeping ideological swings. Take student loan debt, for example. Wiping it all out and passing the cost to taxpayers who never attended college isn't the answer. That a smarter approach tackles the system at its root. Cap tuition increases. Expand income-based repayments so graduates pay according to what they earn, and offer generous tax credits to employers who help with loan repayment. This keeps accountability intact while easing the burden. Students get relief, colleges face pressure to control costs, and the nation avoids radical, unnecessary experiments.
Radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal?
Maher continues sounding the alarm for Democrats about the dangers of handing real power to figures like Sanders and Mamani. He points out that America already has plenty of programs with socialist roots: Social Security, Medicare, public education, all designed to soften economic challenges without dismantling the broader capitalist system. These safety nets exist to support people, not replace private enterprise. But Maher warns that the new wave of self-styled social democrats isn't satisfied with that balance. They're pushing for a far more radical shift, moving toward full-blown socialism with sweeping government control and policies that could undermine the nation's ability to protect its own interests. In his view, their agenda includes significantly looser border rules, which critics argue could compromise basic security. To Maher, this is an idealism. It's a reckless gamble with the country's stability.
You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal? It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
Maher issues a blunt warning to the DNC. Keep chasing reckless ideological trends, and power could slip away for a long time. Right now, socialism is the latest obsession. He argues the party is trapped in a cycle, endlessly pursuing whatever flashy idea dominates activist circles. In the last election, it was wokeness, a fixation that drove moderates and independents away. Today, it's socialism, loudly championed by the party's most vocal figures. Meanwhile, everyday Americans are frustrated with rising costs, weak borders, and cultural overreach. Instead of addressing these real concerns, the DNC drifts into political fantasies that excite Twitter activists but alienate the very voters they need. Maher's warning is clear. If this continues, the party shouldn't be shocked when winnable elections slip through its fingers.
Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that again.
Maher argues that the Democratic Party won't win another major election until it returns to what he calls basic political normalcy. Voters are exhausted by constant ideological swings, endless culture wars, and performative politics, and he's not the only one raising the alarm. Even many seasoned Democrats and DNC insiders share the same concern. The party has wandered too far into symbolic battles and activist-driven fantasies, leaving practical, results-focused solutions by the wayside. Maher insists it's time for the DNC to abandon extreme policies and refocus on issues that actually impact Americans' lives: affordable living, border security, economic stability, public safety, and effective governance. These are the areas where tangible results matter far more than empty rhetoric. Until the party prioritizes substance over spectacle, Maher warns, it will continue alienating moderate voters and losing elections it should be winning.
These Democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegate suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, for sake. Really? This is who the Democrats are thinking of following? Chuck Schumer ain't perfect, but at least he doesn't crumple into a heap when confronted with Chanel No. 5. You may now clap in the traditional way.
This new wave of socialist Democrats feels like a strange mashup of woke culture and hard-left economics. Seriously, who trades normal applause for those awkward, jazz hand gestures, or whatever they're calling it now? It comes across less like a political movement and more like a performance of sensitivity. Even their stylistic choices seem deliberately symbolic, signaling ideological purity instead of professionalism. When wokeness and socialism collide, everything becomes performative. People tiptoe around imagined offenses, and confidence, competence, and clarity vanish. Self-censorship replaces boldness, and every action feels calculated to avoid upsetting anyone, anywhere, for any reason. That it's exhausting. It's unserious. And that's exactly why so many voters are rolling their eyes at the whole movement.
When FDR was president, when Truman was president, even when JFK was president, you go out on the street and you say to people, which party represents the working class of America? Most people, I think, agree, would have said the Democratic Party.
Correct.
All right. Today you go out on the street and that is not the sentiment. In fact, the Republican Party probably has more adherents than the Democrats.
How did that happen?
I'll tell you how it happened. It happened because 30 years ago, the Democrats said, hey, Republicans are getting all this corporate money. We want it too. Let's go out and get it. And let's forget about the people who are working 50 or 60 hours a week. So you're sitting out there somewhere in the Midwest. You can't afford health care. Maybe your job went to China and you're earning half of what you used to make. Your kid can't afford to go to college.
The real reason people are drifting toward the Republican Party runs deeper than headlines suggest. Democrats have wandered so far into wokeness that they've lost touch with the issues that actually matter to everyday Americans. Instead of championing the working class, the backbone of their traditional base, they've become consumed with symbolic battles, identity politics, and fringe cultural debates that do little to improve lives. In doing so, they've abandoned the very voters who once depended on them. Workers struggling with rising costs, families trying to stay afloat, and communities frustrated with crime, weak borders, and failing public services. Rather than tackling these challenges head-on, the party chases approval from small activist circles online, mistaking social media applause for real political momentum. That's why voters are leaving. Not because Republicans are flawless, but because Democrats have stopped delivering focus, practicality, and common sense. When a party prioritizes the periphery over its core, the core eventually walks away. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.